All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sophie Chika. Welcome to a YouTube Live, where we're going to be talking about the 16 days of activism, which has started from the 25th of November to 10th of December. 25th of November being the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women and Girls, and 10th December being the International Day of Human Rights. This 16 days of activism is a campaign, it's a call of action against gender based violence, violence against women, femicide, female mutilation, adolescent girls, killing of women, and so many other things. So, in collaboration, Basic Rights Watch and UPAD, Forum for Young Professionals in Policy and Development, have come together to mark these this international program, which is the 16 Days of Activism. And the theme of this year is Unite to End Violence Against Women. And we're joining the nationwide women worldwide, the United Nations, WHO, and the rest to fight against this violence against women. I'm Sophie Chika. I represent the Forum for Young Professionals in Policy and Development. I have two people here, two speakers here with me, Austin and Andrea. I'll allow them to introduce themselves immediately. Please, Austin, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chika. My name is Austin Ekujuru, and I'll be one of your guest speakers today.
You.
Oh, hi. Hi, Sophie. Hi, Austin. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrea Van Enquen, and yes, I'll be one of the speakers as well.
I'm so excited to meet the both of you. Uh, Shortly, we are going to go into the discussion of the day. For those who are watching and don't know what this program is about, it is a program against gender and sexual based violence against women and girls. Like I said earlier, it is a challenge for people to do the right thing with women and with girls. And alongside this campaign this year, there are various themes that the United Nations of Women have put together. The first one is to end impunity by holding perpetrators accountable for establishing zero tolerance against, gender-based violence, invest in the prevention of women rights organizations to ensure rights and access to essential services for survivors and many others. So, but firstly, let's get into the business of the day. Okay, we have somebody, Lovina. Please, Lovina, introduce yourself.
Okay, good day everyone. My name is Lovina, and I'll be taking you through the role of the media in reporting gender-based violence.
Okay, thank you very much, Lovina, for joining us. We're glad to have you. Firstly, I'm going to start with Austin. We have a few questions for you. We need you to, do a few explanation to us. Can you please tell us this? Can you please tell us what the tools that there are to mitigate gender-based
Is it just
violence?
me, or sorry for butting in, Sophie? Is it just me, or is there like an overlapping noise in the background? Is that just from my end?
Yeah, I think it has been taken care of.
All right. So today we are going to be talking about the media, the role of the media for sexual and gender-based violence, the available tools that have been, since the inception, since people have known about this, the available tools for mitigating gender-based violence, and how the law enforcement agencies have been able to curb these issues of sexual and gender-based violence in the communities, in the locals, within, people, the survivors of, these activities. So let's over to Austin, please. What do you think are those tools? Can you please educate us on the tools that have been available to mitigate gender-based violence?
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Sophie, and thank you for the both organizations for putting this event together. It is very, very important that we're also marking the 16 days of activism. Yeah, but to quickly jump into the question you asked, yeah, sexual and gender-based violence is one issue that has been discussed, or it's one issue that we have seen to be a pandemic, and it's really affecting a whole lot of young people, in our society. And to address this issue, a lot of people have developed, used technology to develop lots and lots of tools to be able to address this issue, this pandemic in our society. But it would be a disservice if I start listing, all the technology, all the tech tools, because I might run the risk of mentioning some and not calling some, and it might be because some of these tools are actually very, very, helpful in our society. So I wouldn't run the risk of trying to list all those tools and then excluding some. But however, for the purposes of your question, I would like to just mention only one. And the why I say I will mention one is because um, I was part of the consultants that developed that tool. So I would like to talk about SASA. SASA is a sexual assault support assistant. So it's a tool that actually digitizes the directory of SGBV responders in Nigeria, from law enforcement agents to SAC centers to for all the first responders. So it's a chatbot tool. It digitizes the directory of SGBV responders so that users or survivors can actually leverage their WhatsApp. You don't need to download any app. You can leverage your WhatsApp and you can be able to query the chatbot, and the chatbot will provide you the nearest responder that is close to you. So it uses Google location to find you where you are, and it can be able to once you just query it, it can be able to respond to you immediately and tell you SGBV responders that are closest to you, so that you can be able to access help. It has another feature that it also provides for survivors or for users, materials, such as like the VAP Act, SGBV prevention toolkits, and a lot of other materials related to issues around GBV and SGBV. So that's the second feature. Then the third feature is allows you to also speak to maybe if you want to speak to a counselor, it gives you that opportunity to be able to speak to a counselor. But then these are the three features that chatbot had. Then, but my as a way of conclusion with the question, the important thing I want to say, regardless all these tools, very beautiful tools that I need, one thing I want to talk about is the utilization of all these tools. There are so many tools out there, but how far has it been utilized? So how far have people been able to leverage on it? Is there any form of monitoring and evaluation to actually see if these tech tools are actually providing the services, that they ought to provide? Then the second thing is about limitations. I know that not all the tools can be able to provide all the services that is required in tackling issues around GBV and SGBV. So in that instance now, how far are other tools coming up, looking at the limitations that the current tools have, and also trying to bridge or provide, a tool that can actually bridge that gap? And how can civil society and all other organizations building tools around curbing SGBV how is it that you are building on where others stop and not trying to duplicate or replicate what people have already done, so that you can be able to bridge, the existing gap. And the last point I want to make is about the response data uptake. So how far is even a law enforcement agents utilizing the data that organizations, civil society organizations, individuals are providing with these tech tools? How far are they leveraging on these tools, to be able to uptake data and ensure that you curb sexual and gender-based violence? Because it's not enough to say that these tools exist and all that. They are generating, they are providing data. What is the data uptake like? What is the time of response and all that, to ensure that when people leverage on these tools, make any form of complaint or make any form of this, that people, relevant agencies of government swing into action to be able to curb this menace. So this is where I would like to drop.
Okay, thank you very much, Austin, for that point. You made mention of law enforcement, how they tend to utilize these mitigation tools, these technology tools, for to help mitigate gender-based violence. That will bring me to you, Andrea. I think Austin has even helped me to ask the question, because I tend to wonder how these, when the survivors make their reports or make use of these tools, how does the law enforcement help these survivors to with their reports, and how do they help these survivors protect them, ensure that they are safe, ensure that they don't also get involved in other things, because they made a report. Andrea, your mic is muted,
Yes,
please.
yes, yes. I just unmuted. Thank you, Sophie. I was saying Austin has answered, I think, most of the questions. We can call it a day. Okay, but okay, so yes, and I think that ordinarily, ideally, in a working system, when these tools are built, right, and reporters make this kind of survivors, I mean to say, make this kind of complaints or leverage or engage with this kind of tools. I think that ideally, first of all, what it does is that there's anonymity, in the sense that a survivor does not have to deal with people directly. So I would say, in an ideal world, then that works, because you're just taking a report, you're interacting, and you're able to, it takes away that shame that a lot of times survivors feel, right? But sadly, we don't live in an ideal world. So, as Austin said, he said that a lot of times what we find out is that organizations are building these platforms or leveraging these tools, but there seems to be a disconnect between usage. Even when there's huge usage, right? There seems to be a disconnect between now what we're doing with the data these tools are generating, because they're generating real time data. That's the disconnect. And my work in the SGBV response space, what I've been able to see over the years has been that there's always that disconnect, to say that even when you've scaled, even when you've tried to close the gap that exists between survivors and resources or available resources, you would find out that the experience with law enforcement or the entire criminal justice system remains one that is quite disheartening, in the sense that a lot of times victims are re-traumatized in the process of interacting with law enforcement, interacting, and not just law enforcement, because a lot of times you feel like law enforcement is the face of the criminal justice system, but even with sometimes even judicial officials, it's just a whole process, and it's not an individual thing, it's a systems problem, in the sense that even for the NGOs who are doing this work, please, a lot of times, let's say we use the Nigerian police force, for instance, or the Nigerian police do not have access to that database, right? Right. So what now needs to be designed? I think that we can have all the tools we need to have, but if we don't think of the SGBV work as a systems work, then we are going to continue to have these problems. So I know a lot of Austin just walked us through a particular platform now, a tool that's available to survivors. But I know I can, top of my head, I can count like 10 of these tools that are available. And the disconnect starts from the fact that there's no synergy between all of the CSOs working on these issues, right? So imagine that we have CSOs working on these issues in such a way that once I flag something on the platform Austin mentioned, is reflected on another platform, and we have it in such a way that the the organizations, the security organizations responsible for responding to cases of SGBV are connected to that database as well. So when these cases are flagged, case managers, the most what you're supposed to do is move it to a centralized database where the police or NAPTIP or the Nigerian security, civil defense, have access to these things and can swing into action. That's the disconnect. So I don't know if the Nigerian police force has access to any database currently, any non-profit run database of reporting or taking cases of abuse. I know Dorothy Njemanzi does work around that. So I think the issues are more systemic before we go to technology, because even if you're saying they can take advantage of the data, work with the data, there's a so SGBV happens offline before it even happens online, right? So it doesn't matter if you've developed new tools, if the attitudes that made SGBV response abysmal, if the attitudes that made SGBV response left them less to be desired are still there, then we cannot move the dial on SGBV response. So the question now is that what is even the attitude of the police or law enforcement when you report a case of SGBV? For a lot of victims, what they say is that when they go to the police, they are re-traumatized. It's like you're reliving your abuse again. So I think the question now will be to say that if we have a survivor-centered approach to even designing these tools, we'll stop working in silos, we'll get the police on board to say, okay, come into the room, this is what we're working. When we get these cases, this is what we're trying to do. Move these cases to you, scale up. I think that's the conversation we should be having. More like how do we collaboratively address SGBV? A lot of times, survivors we talk to CSOs or we talk to first responders who are in the non-profit space and all the first responders who are state-run or state actors. So what do we now do? I know Dorothy Njemanzi does that currently, where when they get those cases, they escalate to the police. But a lot of times what you will find is that they're not escalating to a system in the police force. What they are escalating to often are individuals within the Nigerian police who are sympathetic or passionate about SGBV cases. I know for one that I know for one, I can speak because there are people I've worked with. I know the current gender desk, head of gender desk at the defense is very passionate about SGBV. So in most cases, you'll find out that you're escalating to individuals and not systems. So what now happens when those people are transferred is that that gap exists. You realize that you may have had a system working, but that system wasn't institutionalized. It was more or less an individual, doing what they've been asked to do, of course, doing their daily mandate, but nothing was standardized in the sense where you can say that if that individual moves away, then you have that system continues to run. So I think that's the gap, that a lot of times when you even find people that you're escalating these cases to, you're escalating to individuals. Because why? Primarily the attitudes, the normative culture that exists even offline when you go manually to report a case exists. So technology doesn't take away that problem, and technology cannot be used if we do not change our attitudes and we do not begin to interact with those tools holistically. I don't know if I've answered your question, but I think I'll leave it here. If you need me to clarify or speak to other issues.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Andre, for that wonderful response.
Okay.
Lovely night. Since your network is going on and off, but
Yeah.
after the usage of these tools, let's say the survivors make use of these tools, they go to report. The department that does the greater work is the media. And I wonder sometimes how the media does their reporting. So can you please enlighten us? What are the best practices for the media to, report these issues, and how do they report these issues to avoid re-traumatizing these survivors?
Um, Okay, thank you very much, Sophie, and thank you, Austin and Andre, for making it easier to speak about this. So, firstly, I would say, reporting issues like this, you need to get the consent of the survivor. If you're reporting issues like this, consent is very important. While we are trying to curb gender-based violence, it is important that those victims or survivors who were involved in such issues should be contacted. And that is why it is very important that there are some content we see or information displayed on TV or any media platform where you see people's names not revealed or their faces are covered. That is to say, they may have given permission for their stories to be shared, but their identity shouldn't be revealed because it has a way of re-traumatizing these people, remembering them about their incidents. So consent is very important. And then using of sensitive languages when reporting issues like this, there are words that you should be very mindful of. And that is why it is important for any media person reporting issues like that to be very conversant with words that do not re traumatize the survivor. Words like rape, for example, it is better to call that person a survivor than to call that person someone who has had a rape issue. It has a way of messing around with that person, especially because these people sometimes face stereotypes in the society and all that. And it is very, when reporting issues like that, there are four key principles which you should look out for. That is respect. You look out for respect, you look out for safety, you look out for stereotype, and then I can't remember the fourth one at the moment. But these are things you should watch out for just so your victim is protected. And what you need to know is that the aim at which you're giving out such information is because of the survivor. You are protecting the survivor, either legally, emotionally, physically, and all that. This is also to say that and gender-based violence is not only sexual. We have other forms of gender-based violence. So not because it didn't happen it didn't involve sexual activities, it doesn't mean that the rights of the survivor should not be protected. And in reporting issues like this, we should see it as a societal issue and not the problem of the survivor. The moment we keep making it seem like it is you that it happened to, and societies or community leaders are not getting involved to say that this should be handled in the community, then people will get away with the issues. Perpetrators will get away with things they have done. So it should be addressed and it should be punished accordingly. Because regardless of what the survivor were or where the survivor was, a crime is a crime and it should be handled accordingly. And then we should be very mindful of things, the kind of contents we expose when speaking about survivors. It is very important to include viewers discretion just so they are not comfortable to see some of these things again. It is very important that those things are put out and not just giving information just like that. And it is also very important that we should celebrate the strength of the survivor, not just focus on the situation that just happened. Celebrate the survivor for navigating through the situation, for trying to get back on her feet, for trying to push through regardless of stereotypes, regardless of what had happened. So we should, when presenting issues or when giving out such information, survivors should be celebrated for their strength and not just their weaknesses or the situation that had happened.
All right, thank you very much, Lovina. You did excellently well. I love your response. But something struck me when you made mention about the locals, the communities, the society at large. And that brings me to Austin. What do you think? How do you think that, these are cultural and societal norms? How do you think they impact, on the effectiveness of these gender based violence mitigation tools?
Yeah, I think in a number of ways it does. I mean, the topic of this conversation is on uniting to break the culture of silence. So there are cultural implications to most of all this, and I'll give you a few instances. So issue of stigma, it's one in our cultural setting, because most times, just like Lovina said, we don't celebrate the strength of the survivors, and rather we try to stigmatize them. Oh, this person has passed through this incident and all that, instead of us to support them and strengthen them. So the issue of stigma is one thing that is there. Another thing also that that's hampered people from utilizing some of these tools is also the culture of silence. So within our environment, there's this culture of silence. When somebody speaks up, it also draws back to issues around stigmatization as well. People intend to say, even for instance, cases of GBV, SGBV that we have tried to address, you see in most cases, parents will be even at the forefront to tell their children, or sorry, the survivors, or maybe their relative or something, to say, don't even speak up, don't even go to the police, don't even use anything, just leave it. Sometimes we say, let us leave it for God. So these issues are part of the drawbacks, that are actually hampering the use of, some of these technological tools. And these are the things that we should also work on. Another issue is this issue of patriarchal system that we have in our society. Yes, most times that patriarchal kind of influence over the women in the society, actually, in more especially in cultural settings, also try to the use of these tools, because in most times you see that domination, and you see those even in cultural setting, they would like to tell you that this is that, you're a man, you're going to stay in a man's house, so why would you want to go and embarrass yourself and all those things, leave all those things, let it happen, all those kind of pedestrian conversations that you see that happens, in most cases try to also hamper the use of these tools. So yeah, so on that, that is what I have to say. That, but we have a road to also to ensure that survivors tend to use this by also creating a lot of awareness within these cultural settings, to make people also understand that there is a need for people to utilize these tools, more especially survivors, more especially people who have witnessed GBV or SGBV, so that we can be able to produce, provide data that could help for policy decisions, and help to also have a targeted approach towards addressing issues of SGBV.
All right. So, thank you very much, Austin. You guys are just leading me from this person to this person. I cannot just help but enjoy the conversation, even though I'm not speaking. Uh, Andre, he made mention of protecting these individuals, these survivors that experience gender-based violence, and based on the society, we find ourselves patriarchy, and you hear things like, no, you are going to do, you can't tell somebody that you were raped, or I beg, things like that. And this survivor picks up the courage to report, to tell somebody, go to the police and say, I was raped by so person, I was raped here, this kind of thing happened. How does the law enforcement protect these survivors? It's something that is questionable. How are they protected to ensure that their parents, sometimes does not come back to say, why did you go to do something like this? Or the person that abused them does not come back to do it the second time and say, so you have the guts to even go and report. How are they protected during, this legal process? This, how are they protected?
All right, thank you, Sophie. So quickly before I answer my question, I think that with Austin's question, it's important to also add that technological access is a major hindrance. So a lot of times, even with those mitigation tools, what we find out is that it stops in the urban area. So, for instance, even if people are in the rural areas, even if they have access to phones, right? Do they even have the digital literacy to be able to leverage those tools? So these are some of the things I just wanted to drop that out there, so that when we are thinking of these tools, we are looking at the economic context to that could impact access, could impact even usage as well. I just need to mention that. So to your question, I would say that when it comes to protecting survivors of um, sexual and gender based violence, right? I would first of all start that we must look at it as a communal thing. It's primarily a communal thing. So from the moment a crime has been committed, whether it's gendered violence or SGBV violence, the first thing we need to understand is that at that moment, a crime has been committed against the state. It's not even just about the individual, it's that someone has disrupted law and order, right? And when there is breakdown in law and order, what that leaves room, it leaves room for anarchy, it leaves room for chaos. So protecting a victim or survivor of SGBV is the first step to restoring back that law and order. So if you think of it as a continuum, you think of it as once you offend a system, it's like having headache, it affects your whole body. So that's how I like us to think of protecting victims or survivors of SGBV, is that once that crime has been committed, a whole system has been affected. And from that moment, everybody who is interacting with such a survivor will either protect them or will worsen the situation. So what do I mean? From the first person they report to before it even gets to the police or it gets to court, everybody owes that survivor the duty to do what they can to protect them, to further ensure that their rights are not further violated. So, for instance, and I'm saying this because a lot of times emphasis are laid on security operatives, but it could be anything. Rarely do people even walk up to the police to report SGBV. So a lot of times they are reporting to a family member, an NGO, a teacher, a priest, and all of that. We need to remember that we are duty bound, right, to do what we must do to protect the survivor, to protect their wishes and aspirations. I'll share a good practice, for instance. In Lagos State, if you report SGBV, because what the DSVA, it's the unit that handles this kind of issues in Lagos. What they discovered was that a lot of times when cases of SGBV were reported, family members will come back and say, you know what, we're not doing again, we're forgiving the person, we're afraid the person is powerful. Currently in Lagos State, if such a case is reported and you come back to withdraw that case, what the Lagos State government now does is that it gives you a form to fill saying that you are an accomplice to that crime. So what that does is that it puts a burden on you. You can't withdraw such a case. It re-emphasizes to community members that that crime is not against your family, it's not against your religion, it's not against your church, it is against the Lagos State government. Those are the kind of best practices that further protect survivors. And another thing again I would like to talk about is the SACs. We are supposed to have sexual assault referral centers or even this kind of shelters, but a lot of times we find that they're not even effective. So victims sometimes are forced to go back and live in the communities with the perpetrators, or sometimes are forced to go back and live in the communities with these people. They are granted bail and all of that. We need to think of these things and figure them in when we are passing policies. It is why if you look at the VAP makes rooms for shelters, makes room for things like this. But then that's where implementation comes in. We do not have these shelters. So one of the major things we can do or ordinarily we're supposed to do is to take such a survivor away from that immediate harm. So, for instance, if the person offending or the person perpetrating that violence, if the abuser is a family member, what you're supposed to do is to remove the person from the house. Do we have access to those things? And it goes back again to CSOs, to donors, and all of that. It's for us to begin to look at SGBV, as I said, as a continuum. What that means is that from the moment somebody reports a case of SGBV, their life does not stop to be under threat. If anything, the moment you report, the threat you're facing doubles. And so from that moment, we begin to look at how do we better secure this person? How do we better improve their safety? Do we need to take them away from the community? What is the state doing? How can our CSOs, how can we come together to, band together to secure their safety? And lastly, media, when there's a lot of media attention on a particular case, it better protects survivors. So that way perpetrators know that there's a lot of attention, the law enforcement know that there's a lot of attention, so everybody is forced to come correct and do what they need to do to protect survivors throughout that process of accessing or getting justice. Thank
All
you.
right. Thank you very much, Andrea. You made mention of the perception of the families. You also made mention of stigma. You made mention of the media when they are reporting it. That brings me to Lovina. You know, Lovina does a lot of media reporting, and she's in the best position to explain these things to us. So, what do you think is the role of the media in shaping the perception of the public when they go out, when these survivors report these issues? The journalists want to tell the public this is what is going on. How do you think the media what do you think the media should do to change the mindset of these people to say that, oh, this is not just your family problem, or it's not an individual problem. This is a crime that has been committed against the
Okay.
law of Nigeria. What do you think the media should do concerning that?
Can you hear me now, please?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah. So you asked me the role of the media in shaping the public's perception. So
Yeah.
the media have a lot of work to do. They have a lot of work to do. And then in shaping the public's perception, one of the things they need to do is promoting, like I had mentioned earlier, is that the media should project these as a societal issue where everyone gets involved, to know that this is not just about the victim, this is not because it happened to you, and so it is about you alone and all those kind of things. And then the media also, the role they play in this is that they strike a balance between the survivor and the way the survivor is portrayed to the people. It should be considered that this person was only a victim, and not because she brought it or he brought it about herself, that this had happened to her. So the fact that these issues are being presented, and then it is tackled to say that you still have a chance to live, you still have a chance to live amongst the community and all that, where this victim is also respected, this victim is also safe. It doesn't come back to him or her to say that it is it is your issue. The media has a role also by raising awareness. A lot of people, it is not enough that people are only aware that gender-based violence exists, but they should also know the implication it has on victims, how these people live through the situation, and how they are able to play their way around the situation and all that. So they should create awareness. They should create campaigns where even in situations where people are not willing to speak up, the media should be able to portray people who have had such situations and are protected to open up to say that to encourage other survivors and all that. And then shaping social norms. One of the issue I have is gender roles. Like I said earlier, gender-based violence is not only sexual. So if you're trying to curb gender-based violence, you should know that gender role is a very, very big issue, where you see situations like you are a man, you are a lady, this is what you should do and what you're not supposed to do. So the moment media portrays to tell that aside childbirth, I don't think there's anything a man or a woman cannot do. So if the media are able to create awareness to tell people that this is a psychological form of gender-based violence, or this is an emotional form of gender-based violence, where gender roles should be for both genders and not for a particular gender, it is going to help in shaping um social norms, and then depicting healthy and respectful relationships as the norm, where I was in the north sometime, and then I see how these people, the male and the female, relate amongst themselves. It is not a normal thing to see a man, a boy and a girl playing around and all that thing. That is another form of gender-based violence, where the women are not really given the opportunity to be very expressive, to play as a child, a lot of limitations and all those kind of things, and to also challenge stigma. Stigma is a very big problem which the survivors have, where people will see you and then they call you a certain kind of name. And to some, it is another way of pushing them out to go and commit suicide. So this is bringing problem upon another problem. So the media should be able to challenge stigma. They should be able to challenge stereotypes that these survivors have to face, and they should help in their recovery process. We have a lot of survivors who have been in such situations and have recovered from all these have recovered from the trauma and all that. So the media should be able to show and celebrate some of those survivors who have recovered from the situation.
All right. Thank you very much. That was very, very insightful. Austin, as these mitigation tools, these technological tools that help these survivors, help them to report. Sometimes they face issues of funding. They don't have. There's no money to like probably upgrade the tool, or there's no money for other ones. How do you think that these organizations or these people that have these tools, how do you think they should source for funding, resource allocation, for the implementation, and not just implementation, sustainability of these mitigation tools? Alongside, I'll also like you to give us your final words. Thank you.
Yeah, all right. So thank you so much, Sophie. I mean, um there are a lot of competing issues in the society, or competing sectors, for resources. So resources are scarce, and the only way that we can be able to, one, work towards sustainability, and one, towards also scaling existing tech tools that have been, that are there to actually curb issues around sexual gender based violence. So I will start by sustainability. Sustainability goes this way by working in partnership with the government. And I say this because the government is critical component to the work of civil society organizations. In fact, the state is even the first beneficiary of the work of civil society organizations. So the state has a lot of responsibility in terms of supporting civil society organizations, and also supporting existing tech tools that are actually helping the state in itself to curb issues around sexual gender-based violence. And it is important in the sense that, in terms of budgeting, so budgeting is important to ensure that there's a level of support, that actually goes to the work that civil society are also, doing. So resource sharing is also important. Resource sharing in the sense that, I mean, Andrea made this very, very important point. Resource sharing is actually important. Collaboration between civil society organizations to ensure that the work that they are doing, there's a level of collaboration, there's a level of linkage between the work that they are doing, so that we don't go and replicate, or begin to replicate efforts that has already been made. In that way, it's going to make organization A spend money on the same thing that organization B is doing, which in the same way might not be helpful, and in terms of resources and all the rest of them. Then yeah, I think again the major problem that we have also had is also over reliance or dependence on donor funding or external funding. In that way, people are very relaxed that you can't crowdfund, you can't fundraise, to be able to, because when society or when community have a level of vested interest in the work that you're doing, it's easy for them to actually contribute to see that that particular technology or that particular work that you're doing is sustained. But if the community, if they see it like you are bringing it down, they don't have any input towards the design, implementation, and sustainability of the program, it becomes an issue. So in designing such tech tools, there should be a needs assessment that has to go on so that community will have input in the work that you're doing so that it can actually guarantee or it can actually be one of the sustaining factors in terms of sustainability. Another issue is on scalability. So that's why I talk about involvement of government in this, because one is that it helps, to scale the work that you're doing. In other climes, in the other clients, government agencies actually support the work civil societies are
Yeah.
doing. Yeah. So how do our own government or the government of Nigeria actually support very, very important tools, that are helping to curb SGBV? Because every day, and I would like to end on this final note, every day, every year, we keep discussing issues of sexual and gender-based violence. What is the metrics for measuring the successes that we have achieved? If you can't measure anything, nothing can be done. And it's on that note that I'm going to end, that we should be able to, both on the government side, both on the civil society side, all these tools that we have, all these interventions that we have, we should have a metric or a way that we can be able to measure, the successes of this, so that we know we are making progress. So that when we come back here by next day to actually mark the 16 days of activism, we can say we've moved from point A to point B. Because if nothing is measured, nothing can be done. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Lovina, he made mention of collaboration, he made mention of, civil society organizations, and all these things. For the society to know what is happening, we are going to need the media to meet, to their hands should be on deck. And he talked about, he made mention of data, and we know that with the media, they do a lot of, data keeping, why they do their reporting and all that. So how do you think that the media should collaborate with these NGOs, these advocacy groups, the government, you know, for the progress of gender-based violence? And after that, please, could you just do well to give us your final words? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So, since the media may not have first-hand information of some of these issues, the NGOs go out more to get informations like this, which they bring to the media. So it is very important that they collaborate together, just so these things are projected for people to know that they truly exist. And there have been these conflicting issues between journalists and NGOs, where some journalists feel that the NGOs are using them to gain popularity, or to access money for their NGO for funding and all that. While some NGOs still feel, while some journalists, sorry, I made mention of journalists, right? So this time around, the journalists are feeling that the NGOs are not paying them for the funding they are getting and all those kind of things. So if we keep doing the blame game, this one is not getting funding, this one is not getting recognition, these issues will not be tackled. So those things should be set aside, just so the interest of the survivors, the interest for which these things need to be curbed, is actually achieved. So NGOs and media have a very big role to play in this. And like I had said earlier, the NGOs, the media do not have first-hand information of some of these things. So the NGOs, when presenting this information, should have it at the back of their mind that it is not just about promoting them. They are not an NGO without, because some of these people get promotions and they are not even doing the work which they are supposed to be doing, getting to the victims, getting to the survivors and all that. So my final word will be that I think more survivors need to be celebrated and more survivors need to speak up, because we have had a lot of situations where people are not able to speak up because of culture, because of society, because of stereotypes. So if these people will be encouraged to bring more information to the media, where it is projected to know their situation after the incident, It's going to help a lot of victims and it's going to save a lot of people. And we should reduce the blame game. We should stop blaming victims. And that is why it is very easy for perpetrators to get away with whatever crime they have done. Let's call a crime a crime and stop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lovina. Andrea, she talked about, the NGOs having this first-hand information. But to me, I see that the community, the people in the community, the society have the first-hand information. They are the ones that it is the mother that the girl goes to report to say, "Hey, mommy, I was walking on the street and someone did this to me." It is the elder in the community or the people in the church that gets this. And the next thing says, let's go to the police. So how do you think that, they need this collaboration, both the society and the law enforcement, they need the collaboration to be able to, handle these cases properly. So how do you think what are the best practices for these people to do this, for them to, collaborate very well and help these survivors? We don't call them victims, help these survivors, and give us your final words.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. So, first of all, I'd like to say that NGOs and journalists fighting is just some of the silliest thing because I know these things exist, but I like to think of both as two sides of the civic space, right? Yeah, the foundational pillars of the civic space, that civil society and journalists. It is they are the ones who a lot of times shape the kind of conversations that the wider society, average citizens on the streets have. And so I say that to say that if these two factions do not get their acts together, right, we're going to keep having a dwindling or a shrinking civic space. And I'm saying this again to now, like, to lay foundation for what I'm going to say, which I'm going to say that yes, the answers a lot of times lie with the community. The policeman is from the community. The journalist is from the community. The judge is from the community. The president is from the community. So if SGBV it's not getting eradicated or reduced to the barest minimum, then it means that Nigerians are failing. Nigerians are failing Nigerians, right? So what this means is that do not be a mind my business type of person. Be a busybody. If you see something, say something. I make it a point of duty. I'm that auntie. Everybody in my estate knows me. If I see you talking to a girl and I don't think you're her uncle or you're a family member, I ask questions. Did they not send you? Why are you here? Why are you standing here? Go home. Why are you talking to the girl? I ask questions. I'm that busybody. That's what I do. And that's the bystander effect or bystander intervention we talk about. SGBV will only end when bystanders realize that they have power. And by bystanders, I mean community. The people who do these things, we know them. They are not strangers. Rarely does a stranger, rarely will somebody from Maraba go to Asokoro to go and rape someone, right? Or go to rarely will a stranger stand up and come and beat some domestic. In fact, domestic violence, which is a bigger issue than even SGBV, like in the broader sense. Domestic violence, what is family members, either brother hitting a sister, husband beating wife, wife hitting husband. Do you get? So these are not strangers. We know these people. We know them. And I think that until we begin to realize that SGBV affects us, that if it affects one person, it affects us, and then we begin to take collective responsibility. Because the journalist who is in your community will not just start writing out of thin air if his community holds different values, right? The doctor who is seeing a survivor for the first time will ask the right questions if his community asks the right questions. It's our whole value system. And that value system is tied to how we even view womanhood, how we see women, the value we attach to women. If we begin to recognize that women are full human beings with full bodily autonomy, right, then we'll have better protections for women. Because if 50% of your population is made up of women, or almost 50% of your population is made up of women, you're looking at the lives lost, the productive hours lost when women who are disproportionately affected by SGBV are survivors or victims of these crimes. When we begin to look at the numbers, we begin to look at the productive hours lost, we begin to look at the lives lost, we begin to look at the opportunities lost because somebody died of violence. There's a girl writing a thread on Twitter currently, and what she has been documenting has been an eyesore. 1 in 3 girls have experienced sexual violence before, either harassment or something. These numbers are human beings. We are 3 girls currently on this meeting right now. So there's a time going by those reports saying that at least one of us has experienced this issue. These are how real these facts are, these numbers are, these are people. So be a busybody, take full ownership. Need to be asking, what if it is you? So we need to take responsibility, fight as hard for the other person as you would fight for yourself. And so if we begin to take responsibility, then we're going to take it into our communities, take it into work. The journalist will take it into work. The policymaker takes it into work. The CSO person takes it into work. The donor takes it into work collectively. And that's why I'm always talking about systems thinking when we are looking at this kind of issues. We did it with polio. Nigerians did it with polio. We did it with HIV and AIDS. Everybody was talking about HIV and AIDS. It was every man's problem. Let SGBV become every man's problem. And if the moment it becomes every man's problem, then we will make sure perpetrators are held accountable. We will have policies that are survivor and people centered. Rights delivery will be improved. Service delivery will be improved for survivors of SGBV. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we'll have a society where everybody feels safe, where perpetrators are held accountable, where people can live their lives free of violence, or even when they've been violated, they know that there are systems in place to hold perpetrators accountable. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you very, very much for these for your wise words. Thank you for spewing out wisdom to us. Thank you for your contributions. I want to say very big thank you to Basic Rights Watch and UPAD for this opportunity to speak about gender-based violence, for everybody to actually know what this is and what it is about. We want to say a very big thank you to United Nations Women, for this call to action against gender-based violence. And I'm going to leave us with something. SGBV, or should I say gender-based violence, is everybody's problem. It is, if it doesn't happen to somebody in your street, it's going to happen to your sister, it happens to your wife, it happens to your cousin, it happens to somebody related to you. And that person or that number that we are looking at is a human being, like Andrea said. So please let us in unison, like the theme of this year is unite. Let us unite together to break this culture of silence. Let us break this habit of, please, oh, it's none of my business. I don't care. That person that you don't care about, or that person that you're looking at, is somebody, is a human being just like you and I. So thank you very much for listening. Thank you for joining us, Austin, Andrea, and Lovina. Thank you so much for your time. God bless you and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank
Bye.
you, Sophie. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Mm.